I love the spirit.
I had to bring it because I couldn't find my Christmas sweater. So what else could I do? So I have to bring the wreath. I'm not going to
I
present with this
absolutely
on
love
though,
it.
but I wanted
This is.
to.
Oh, you're not gonna keep it on the whole time?
No, it's kind of itchy. It's kind of itchy. So I'm not going
I
to
love
have
it.
that on the whole time.
Christina says that you're challenging me for best costume.
Yes,
I don't know. We're gonna have to
exactly.
both, Brent or me. I think. Oh, Ravit's getting a
Yeah.
new one on there. So Brent, I don't wanna take up much more of your time. I know
Yeah.
you've got a great presentation for us here, so I'll get your slides up. We'll hop off stage and we'll take some questions after.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, guys. All right, so today I'm going to talk about how you can humanize your data, and it's all within the context of data storytelling. And we need data stories more than ever. And if you're not familiar with my book, there's 3 key elements that are a fundamental part of my book. I talk about data, narrative, and visuals. And those are probably no surprise. Those are things that we think about when we think of data storytelling. But the power of data storytelling really comes into play when we look at the intersections between these bubbles. So if we take the raw data and we want to share that with somebody else, there's a good chance that they may not interpret the data the same way we do. They may not understand it like we do. And so what do? We put a narrative with it. We explain the context. We give the meaning behind the numbers and help people to understand the data like we do. And so that's the first intersection of those bubbles. Then what else do we do? Well, we have visuals, and we want to help people to see the anomalies in the data. We want them to see the patterns and the trends in the numbers. And that hopefully enlightens them to new observations, new insights they wouldn't see if they're just looking at tabular data alone. And then lastly, the reason why you're up late last night watching the latest Netflix show or Hulu show, it's because as human beings, we love visual storytelling. And that combination of narrative and visuals is really engaging for us as human beings. And when we combine the right data with the right narrative and the right visuals, all of a sudden we have something that's very powerful that can change the way people view the world, how they behave, how they act, what decisions they make. All of these things is really powerful. But when it comes back to the numbers, some people kind of struggle. Well, how do I humanize my data? How do I make my data connect with people? And I'm going to tell you something very frankly. People don't care about your numbers. They don't care about data at all. What they care about, if we look at senior leaders, who do they care about? They care about customers. Who do salespeople care about? They care about prospects. Who do supervisors care about? Hopefully their employees. Who do politicians care about? Voters, maybe the media too. But we have data, and data reflects our customers. It reflects our prospects. It reflects our employees. It reflects our voters. And so people are going to care about our story when we share information or data that relates to things that they care about. So let me give you an example here of the power of stories versus statistics. And this actually comes from the book by Chip and Dan Heath. In it, they have an example of a Carnegie Mellon University study where they basically looked at, they had a survey and a technology survey that they gave to students. And basically the students take that and they got 5 $1 bills. And then that's where the experiment began, because what they did is they said, hey, we have a brochure here for a real charity, Save the Children. And they had 2 versions of this brochure. One had a lot of data about the suffering of kids in Africa due to famine, war, illness, and a lot of statistics, millions, hundreds of thousands of kids being impacted. Then they had another version. And this version just focused on Rokia, a 7-year-old girl from Mali, and talked about her family and how they struggled to survive. And when they looked at the average donations from these 2 versions, the story version really drove a much higher donation than the statistical version. And so what I'm going to talk about today briefly is how data stories can have heroes too. We want to humanize the data, and I'm going to talk about several ways that you can do that. The first thing you need to do is, if you're going to add a character or a hero to your data story, you need to determine where does your data intersect with people. And so where is that human element of your data? So in this case, using a retail example here, we may have prospective buyers. And so that's who we're looking at. The data that we're looking at relates to prospective buyers. Or maybe we're looking at existing customers and how they're using a mobile app or something. Or maybe we're looking at the employees on the floor and how we can help them perform better. So the first thing is to identify what is that angle, what is that human element within our data, and then we want to bring that to life. And how do we bring that to life? Well, we're going to build a data-driven profile of our hero or character. So I come from a marketing background, and we use personas all the time. Why do we use personas? Well, it helps us to target our campaign to a specific individual that is representative of a segment of customers or different people that we can relate to. And that helps us from a creative perspective. Well, why can't we do that from a data perspective as well? Why can't we create a data-driven persona of our character? So there may be demographic data that we'd want to include to help this character come alive. Maybe we can show different activities or behaviors that they do. Maybe we can show some of the challenges that they're facing. Maybe we know about their goals and maybe their attitudes and motivations. How can we enrich our profile create a data-driven persona and enrich it with lots of data? The other thing is we want to give our hero an identity. And again, this comes from the persona building. Sometimes we put an image or a face to that persona. And Instagram, there was actually a study done on Instagram that found when you have a face in a picture or an image, there's going to be 38% more likes or 32% more comments. And so by taking that persona that we've created, putting a face to it that represents who that individual is, all of a sudden we're not talking about just generic data, faceless data. No, we're putting a face on it and helping people to humanize what's behind the numbers. The next thing we can do is we can give our hero a voice. And often when we're analyzing data, we might be looking at the data and visualizing it this way, but then we can bring in qualitative data. We have our quantitative data. How can we leverage qualitative data to really bring out key statements from representative customers? I've done this all the time with different executive presentations, and it's interesting. I'll have a really nice chart, and then I'll put some quotes or testimonials, or could be from social media or from product reviews or from a survey, and I'll include a quote. And it's interesting how people actually kind of gravitate to those quotes, and really they seem to connect with them. So this can be very powerful as well, adding a voice to your numbers. And then the last thing we can do is we can show the hero's journey. And so how can we get the audience to walk in the shoes of our hero or character? And there's a couple ways that we can do that. One is, maybe everybody in the company knows that we have a bunch of steps that people go through when they call our call center. But do people know what every step and what questions we ask and how we phrase information and what we're looking for? Maybe your audience doesn't know that. Maybe there's an onboarding hiring process. Everybody knows we hire people, but do they know the steps that people take to go through that coming on board and being hired? Or what's the application process that people go through and all the gates and things that we request of people? So putting people through that process, illustrating what that process looks like, can be very illuminating. The other thing too is what I call user experience tours. And so this comes from my marketing background. A lot of the times I'd be analyzing websites or mobile apps, and to include a screenshot of the process or the experience that people are experiencing, that can be really powerful. And then this can apply to product functionality. It can even go into in-store experiences. So if you take pictures and show that experience, it comes to life for our audience. And we feel what the customers feel, or we feel what our employees feel when they go through these different experiences. So I'll leave you with one last quote here. This is from Mother Teresa. If I look at the mass, I will never act. If I look at the one, I will. And so I would encourage you to humanize your data because it inspires action. It's what's going to connect with us emotionally, and that's what really drives a lot of the actions that we take. And so if you'd like to learn more about this topic, definitely check out my book, Data Storytelling, Effective Data Storytelling. And if you're looking for any kind of workshops or speaking engagements, I'm totally open to that and love to partner with you in the new year.
Thank you very much, Brent. This was super interesting. And thanks once again for being the effective data storyteller, as always. So, yeah.
Should I put my wreath back on? You want me to put my wreath back on?
Yeah, yes, of course, put it back on. Sure, why not? We're going to take some questions and Oh, yours doesn't light up, does it? I don't know.
No, it
We're,
doesn't.
I think I make up for it with all the flashing lights here. We do have a few questions that came in that I want to address. Just a quick reminder that you will be selecting winners of the book, Best Questions Asked. So I'll just take a couple here. First one from Wisan. How can confusing characters and visuals be avoided in data storytelling?
Well, I guess one of the things, if we have a character or somebody that's really tied into the message that we're conveying and the data and reflects that. I mean, obviously we're not using these images as decoration. That's the key thing. We're not just, oh, I got this funny image, or I got this this picture of somebody doing something and it's distant or unconnected from what we're the story that we're building. So everything's got to be building on each other. It's not about decoration. That's the key thing. We're not doing this just to look pretty. It's with a purpose. We're trying to help people connect with the people behind the numbers. That
makes sense. Thank you so much. We do have a comment about your background. I think you always get a comment on your background. It's so cool. So that's, there you go.
Oh, I keep moving the wrong way.
And a question from Paul here. Does the storyboard change depending on the audience?
Absolutely, yeah. If that's going to influence the story that we tell. And a simple example would be, imagine you've found an insight and you're communicating that to a technical audience, the people who are going to be implementing that change or doing the approach that you take with that story would be very different than if you're presenting that to the CMO.
Right.
And she may have the purse string, she may be approving it, but if you're working with the technical team who's going to deploy that insight and implement it, that's going to be same insight, but told very differently. And so definitely the audience influences what direction we take with our story.
Makes sense. Thank you so much. And we do have more questions that are coming in. Maybe we can take those offline if you have a few minutes to go online.